Amir, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So Amir, just to get started, what's AngelList and what's your role there?
Sure. What is an AngelList these days? We do a ton of things. Primarily we're meant to serve founders. We're instrumental in the startup space. We have a lot of different business verticals. So when people ask me what we do, there's always a different answer depending on kind of the person and what they're familiar with. Founders typically need help with three problems. They need to fundraise, they need to hire folks, and they need to find customers. Over time, AngelList has grown with these three different business units to kind of solve each of those problems. So we have our venture unit, AngelList Venture, that does fundraising. We have AngelList Talent, which helps with the hiring. And we have Product Hunt, which helps with finding customers. It's a pretty complex beast.
Right.
I'm the Associate General Counsel there. I have been in this role for about a year and a half. And it's been really interesting having kind of a role that touches on these three different units and has a kind of blend of a venture fund practice and a corporate governance practice, startup practice. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and even to piggyback on it, we're one of the biggest champions and promoters of AngelList. We at Lawtrades, we raised money through AngelList. We hired people through A-List. We launched on Product Hunt, and now we have you guys as a customer and a big supporter. So, super pumped about all the work you guys are doing.
Glad to hear it. Next thing you got to do is launch your own fund.
I know. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
How big is the legal team that you have? I know you guys have a bunch of contractors, but now you guys move stuff in house. So what's the deal there?
Yeah, we've been evolving. So when I started, technically the legal team was a legal team of one. It was Eric, our GC. I walked in and saw that he was doing a massive amount of work on his own. Eric is a superhuman generally, and he was taking on a superhuman task.
Right.
And I think he was leveraging, Lawtrades and other folks to get more impact across in his role. So when I joined, it was just him and me, the two of us. And then we've grown since then. We're now a team of four. We have a compliance manager and another legal counsel on the team. Really great team. Really happy to be working with them. And we're still, over leveraged. I think, it's kind of crazy. It's crazy to think that one or two people did this when even the four of us, it's hard for just the four of us to kind of manage all this.
Right.
But it's been really exciting, and hopefully we'll grow soon.
For sure. And, how has this whole crisis impacted the business in general?
Yeah, great question. I think like everyone else, it's definitely impacted us. As I mentioned before, a lot of us are working just remotely. I'm just visiting my parents a lot more often than I used to, kind of living with them now.
Mm-hmm.
It's been different for our different business units. It's no secret that we've been impacted by COVID-19 like the rest of the industry. There's stuff online that you can tell that, we've had to conduct some layoffs. We had to cut back on some spending and take some of our legal work in-house as a result. But, other parts of the business are doing really well. There's I've been really pleasantly surprised that venture is actually growing in this environment. I initially was concerned, but they're actually doing really well. So, I think based on going back to the principle of we're here to help founders, right now I imagine founders are having surprisingly easy time in fundraising, but it's kind of more difficult for them to find customers and probably go through the hiring process right now. So we're impacted the same way.
Right. And I remember Eric telling me before that, AngelList is very distributed, even though you guys have offices in different cities, a lot of the team works remotely. So what tips could you share to make remote work effective for both sides? What are some of your tips and insights there?
Yeah, we did work remotely before COVID. Eric himself, our GC, he worked from home in New Jersey and visited our New York office. Us Cali folks, the rest of the legal team, were kind of working out of the SF office. So pre-COVID, Eric managed us remotely. I think it worked really well. I think the main thing that he did that we've kind of carried forward in COVID times is we've had to go kind of work from home was to be present which can be difficult when you're virtual, but is totally doable. We have useful tools internally to do that. So we have Zoom, and we do video calls often. We Slack constantly,
right.
Which is really helpful. And a fun little GIF here and there, I think, goes a long way,
right.
to kind of engendering presence for folks. And I think we've developed systems and processes, Slack bots to remind us to like update forms we have internally. We have virtual happy hours that we do internally with the legal team every week. We have a standing lunch and learn for the legal team, where we kind of pick a really interesting news article or recent event in the legal world, and we spend an hour basically every week just talking about it and thinking through the issues. Like almost like a little book club for ourselves.
Right.
And it doesn't matter that we're thousands of miles away and we're not in the office. We can still connect with each other on those.
Right. Yeah, that's really cool.
Level.
Yeah, super cool. I haven't heard of some of those ideas in the past. Those are awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah, even just this week, we're just thinking about the latest back and forth between the Trump administration and Twitter, and where does that exec order kind of overlay over other companies in the tech space. It's just really interesting stuff that it's really fun to talk about, and I think actually helps engender team morale to be able to talk through that.
Yeah, definitely. And switching gears to more startups and venture capital, you guys obviously have a lot of great insight into what's going on within the VC industry. So what's your current take on the state of venture sort of in this like post-COVID world?
Yeah, let me preface my answer with I'm no Naval. For those who don't know, Naval is our founder. Really, really obviously smart guy, great Twitter presence. His Joe Rogan podcast is amazing.
Yep.
The only thing I can compete with him in is Smash Brothers. So I'm sure his answer would be much more crisp on this. But I am fortunate enough I'm privy to our wide view of the industry, since so many deals go through the AngelList platform.
Yep.
And if that is an indicator, venture is doing surprisingly well in this environment. We're still seeing good deals happen. We're still seeing a lot of deals happen. It's possible that valuations as a whole are going down, but that might be a good thing. It's very possible that these valuations were inflated to begin with. I remember a few years ago, people were saying there's a venture bubble. Maybe this helped deflate that. And I also think there's more pressure from society, or maybe the Twitter bubble I'm in, to pump even more money into venture. People want to build more physical infrastructure. They want to go for more moonshots. So I think surprisingly, venture is doing well, and I actually think it's going to pull through this better than most industries.
Right. And what's your take on, the whole idea of like the companies that have, raised hundreds of millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars at, really high valuations that are, dealing with massive revenue declines, or, trying to go out and raise like another super high valuation? Like, do you feel the same way about those companies and the current stage of VC for those people?
Yeah, I think the later stage will have some issues. I think they just require more capital. A lot of the later stage companies are tethered to physical environments, so you can see some of them doing more layoffs. I don't want to cast shade on any company in particular, right, but I do know that some of these folks had a round of layoffs and then like the next day raised at a higher valuation.
Right. Yeah. There's a few of those that I've definitely seen.
Yeah, there are a few of those. So yeah. I think there is some nuance there that, I can only conjecture about. I think these companies existed in a system that required rapid growth, and maybe for some of them, there were investments made in parts of that business that didn't make that much sense. And this served as a good throat clearing time for those companies. So it's very possible that like the underlying metrics for them aren't that much changed, and they're probably still going to grow. But it was a good time to kind of reshift.
Right. And then At the seed stage, there's always been a focus on, growth at all costs, essentially, right? And less of a focus on things like profitability. How do seed stage companies, look in a post-COVID world? What's your advice for new founders that are launching, companies during this crisis? Should the behavior change as they move forward, or, do you foresee it just staying more or less the same?
I think companies are going to look different in terms of like how and where they work. I think we're going to see a lot more remote teams, a lot of companies that won't have office space going forward. And even companies that exist now might pivot into like just all remote.
Right.
I don't foresee the underlying dynamics of venture being grow as fast as you can at the expense of profitability changing as of now. I think you'd have to see like a real cratering of the industry for folks to kind of second guess the way they do business.
Right.
At the end of the day, this crisis is not the result of mismanagement. In terms of the business dynamics, you can make your arguments in terms of the government, whatever. But in terms of the business dynamics, this is not like a mortgage crisis where people were doing shady stuff and the fundamentals of the business didn't make sense. The fundamentals of what we had before still make sense. It's just we have a massive disruption in how the world works. And I think the only thing that would shift a change in the underlying dynamics is a major shift in our world post-virus,
right,
which is possible.
Right.
I don't know if that's going to happen.
Right.
I do think, I think founders now, they can take advantage of the disruption in the market. There's cheaper labor. There's overall cheaper costs for them. So I think there's a lot of opportunities, and like the last downturn, which produced stuff like Uber, who coincidentally there was around on AngelList way back when. I think there will be interesting and noteworthy startups are going to come out of this.
For sure. Yeah. There's so many companies started in the last financial crisis that are, you can't really think of living without those companies now, like the Ubers and the Airbnbs of the world.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've had to live without Uber and Airbnb for the past couple months.
Yeah, you're right. Go point.
I have not been a fan.
Yeah, same. You were touching on this briefly about remote teams and remote work. I'm in this Twitter bubble as you, where every single day there's someone tweeting about how their company's going fully remote and they're now leaving San Francisco, and we're seeing it in New York as well. A lot of people are leaving here to go to the suburbs and other states for more reasonable cost of living and stuff. Are you essentially buying into all that hype? Like, do you think that shift is actually going to happen in the Bay Area, or do you think it's just sort of all fluff for now?
I think it's going to happen. I don't think everything will change, but I think there will be a change.
Right.
I think some companies, particularly newer companies, a lot of them are going to be remote. I think as those companies grow into larger companies, I think it will be very hard to run larger companies all remote. I think, if you have Facebook, for example, they're really pushing forward on, hey, anyone can work from anywhere. But then, you get paid less if you go somewhere that's cheaper, which makes sense.
Right.
But I think, I think some people will want to keep the higher pay and probably not move out. And I think there will be a shift towards remote work. I think we'll have more disintegrated teams. Everyone now knows how to use Zoom, which is very different than, a few months ago. My mom knows how to use Zoom, which I never would have thought would have happened. So,
I was just going to say the same thing. It's crazy.
Yeah. The Amir's moms of the world, they all know Zoom. So I think things will change. I don't think it'll be a wholesale change. And frankly, I think there was probably a lot of pent-up demand for remote work that a lot of managers were not cool with before, that will be satisfied after this. So I think it'll change a little bit. I don't think cities are going to crumble. I don't think all office space is gonna go under, but I think there'll be a shift.
Right, for sure. So, there's probably a lot of people listening here that might be interested in, making small angel investments or, participating in sort of, this this fundraising landscape. So this might be a good time to transition into syndicates and how those all work. So could you walk us through like sort of how AngelList syndicates work, how people could participate, and maybe even highlight some of the successful companies that have went through a syndicate all the way through up until like an IPO or an exit or things like that?
Yeah, happy to talk about all that. I mean, I think syndicates are bread and butter. A lot of the platform is based on individual syndicates, and it's grown since then. A syndicate is an investment in one particular company. So it's the ultimate kind of venture bet, kind of putting all your money for that particular investment into one company. And, as a disclaimer, most venture companies fail. You're more likely to lose all your money doing it that way. But it provides, the platform provides access to these deals, which are often very good deals. So I mentioned way back when Uber was one of, a syndicate on AngelList, and we know how well they've done.
Right.
So a potential investor on the platform, they'll get to pick between, a bunch of different syndicates they can invest into those companies. We have lead investors who are supplying the deal flow to the platform, who kind of show the syndicate on the platform and can invite people to deals for their particular syndicate. And then it'll be up to users to see which kind of syndicate leads that they trust and what kind of deals they trust. And a syndicate lead is different than the lead for the round of the venture fundraising, which is an important distinction because we use the term lead kind of very liberally. But, the syndicate leads will basically have a slug of investment into a round that's being led by someone else. And that's been very successful. We have a ton of syndicates on the platform, so we have a very wide array of investments that we can see. The interesting thing that we saw was a lot of our syndicate leads were becoming better and better and better at investing, and we're starting to kind of do more traditional venture funds. So we actually we created a set of legal documents and processes for these folks to have the ability to do multiple investments through a fund. So basically, one traditional venture fund on the platform from a fund lead could invest in multiple syndicates. So then if you're an investor coming on the platform, you can, instead of putting all your money into like one or two syndicates, you can back a venture fund lead who then will make multiple investments on your behalf. And if you believe in power law dynamics and kind of the approach of investing in as much as you can, and just a quick plug, we have a really good blog post on this on AngelList from our data scientist lead, Abe Ottman, which is great on this. You can really reduce your risk and increase your probability of getting some big hits doing a traditional venture fund. And this is kind of what all the other traditional venture funds do as well. They just invest a ton and they hope one or two of their investments hit really big.
Right.
And then more recently, we put together this product called the Rolling Venture Fund, which is a little bit more focused actually on the fund lead and kind of making their life a lot easier. So this Rolling Venture Fund allows for accepting new capital into that fund in the form of auto-renewing quarterly commitments. The interesting thing is you can basically start a venture fund on the platform with an initial kind of small amount and just rely on auto commits every quarter, which can increase the fund size and make it so they don't have to constantly go back to investors and raise a new set of funds. And that's been really successful on the platform.
Nice. Yeah, I can't even imagine how much work you and the legal team had to do to like put something like that together. I just saw it recently, I think probably a few weeks ago. It seems awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot of work. Hats off to the rest of the AngelList legal team for that. I think they really, everyone on the team did a really good job of doing that quickly. This was a legal innovation. No one's really done this before, and we did it very quickly, and we're trying to scale it now. And the amount of work that's gone in and the sophistication has been really, really amazing. So the hats off to the rest of my legal team on that.
That's awesome. Who are some of your favorite angel investors like that you follow and sort of look up to?
Yeah, this one might sound like a little bit of a cheat, but I totally mean this. So Ryan Hoover, who is the founder of Product Hunt, one of the business verticals, he has a fund called the Weekend Fund.
Yep.
And I think he's fantastic. I think he's got a really interesting story in that he's kind of been brought up within the AngelList kind of world where, obviously we brought him on, but we provide all these different services for him. We've helped him recruit and we're helping him fundraise and all this stuff. And I think he's grown as a professional, and I think the deals he's getting are really cool. And I think the fund is doing great. I really enjoy his work here.
That's awesome. And, the last question I had was just for people looking to invest in startups, what are some of the resources you recommend for people to get started with?
Yeah, I'll avoid the obvious answer of go to AngelList, check out our blog and all that, which you should do.
Definitely.
But, I'll speak to my own experience. I started in this venture world as a, lowly corporate associate at Fenwick & West, first year associate, sleeping at the office and scared out of my mind sometimes. And I read the book called Venture Deals, and that really was very helpful to give me a broad understanding of the dynamics in the venture world and what was actually being negotiated in deals. I would read that first. And then there's, other resources on the web. Cooley Go is really interesting in terms of your legal forms. And obviously, AngelList's resources are also really helpful.
Cool, man. We'll definitely link to all of those below. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Yeah, you too, man. Take it easy.